Right now, 12 more states have just activated emergency protocols as weather models are showing something absolutely terrifying. What started as a regional crisis has exploded into a continent-wide disaster that is still growing, and the most vulnerable people on our streets are paying the ultimate price, even as millions of Americans think the danger has passed. I'm talking about a winter storm system that has now officially impacted over 20 states, from New Mexico all the way to Maine. But here is what is really frightening. As I am recording this, atmospheric scientists are confirming that a stratospheric warming event is happening right above our heads, one that could trigger another devastating cold blast by the end of this month. The states that got hit hardest are nowhere near recovered from what they have already endured. The homeless crisis has reached absolutely heartbreaking levels across multiple cities. In New York alone, officials have confirmed that 14 people have lost their lives to the cold, with most of them found outdoors. These are not just statistics. We are talking about people like a 52-year-old immigrant from Ecuador who was discovered on a park bench in Queens, and a 90-year-old grandmother with dementia who wandered outside and could not find her way back to safety. What makes this so devastating is that over 4,500 people are still living on New York streets right now, and outreach teams are finding new cases every single day. The city has deployed 400 specialized workers who are checking on the most vulnerable individuals every 2 hours. But they are still discovering people who did not make it through the night. Nashville has seen over 7,000 people seeking emergency shelter during the worst of the cold, compared to the usual 400. But here's the part that should terrify everyone. While the eastern United States is experiencing this temporary warm-up that has people stepping outside without heavy coats, the same atmospheric disruption that created this crisis is still active and getting stronger. Chicago might hit 60 degrees this week, after being 11 degrees below zero just days ago. That kind of temperature swing is not normal relief. It is evidence that the atmosphere above us is completely unstable. Weather models are showing that a massive Arctic cold pool is building over northeastern Canada right now, and if it breaks free, we could see temperatures that make the recent crisis look mild in comparison. The polar vortex has literally split in half, with one piece positioned over Canada and intensifying while the other spins over northern Asia. When these systems are intact over the North Pole, they keep the coldest air locked up there. When they split like this, all that Arctic air has nowhere to go but south. Canada is dealing with its own version of this expanding crisis. Toronto just set a record for the most snow to fall in a single day since measurements began in 1937, with over 18 inches accumulating at the airport and 24 inches in the city center. Environment Canada has issued winter storm warnings for Wednesday, with up to 6 more inches expected and several hours of freezing rain that could create extremely dangerous conditions. The infrastructure damage across affected states is making communities even more vulnerable to whatever comes next. Mississippi still has areas where power restoration is not expected for weeks, not days. Nearly 300,000 customers lost electricity during the worst of the storms, and utility companies are racing to replace hundreds of damaged poles and transformers before the next system potentially hits. Tennessee recorded its highest power outage count in state history, with some areas going over 2 weeks without electricity. Louisiana saw 51,000 customers without power, and full restoration was delayed multiple times due to ongoing repair challenges. The communities that struggled most during the recent storms are the same ones that will be least prepared if another major event develops. Tell me in the comments which state you are in and how your area is holding up during these ongoing weather challenges. I am seeing reports that some communities are still dealing with infrastructure problems and recovery efforts, and I want to know what the real situation looks like where you are. the economic impact continues accelerating beyond anyone's initial projections. Damage estimates have reached over $4 billion in direct costs, making this the first billion-dollar weather disaster of 2026. But those numbers do not capture the ongoing strain on emergency services, the extended power outages, or the massive disruption to transportation networks that are still struggling to return to normal operations. Natural gas prices remain near record levels as production facilities in affected areas work to restore full capacity. The agricultural sector is facing massive losses as livestock operations struggle to maintain heating and water systems during the prolonged extreme cold. Transportation hubs that were paralyzed during the worst storms are still experiencing delays and cancellations as they work through the backlog. What's particularly concerning is how quickly this crisis has spread beyond its original scope. Federal emergency management officials have now approved disaster declarations for 12 states, with over 5,400 National Guard members deployed across 15 states. FEMA has distributed millions of emergency meals and hundreds of thousands of blankets, but the agency is already warning that if another major event occurs while communities are still recovering, the response capacity might not be adequate. The current forecast is where this situation gets truly frightening. Multiple weather prediction models now show potential for what scientists are calling a winter storm severity index, with major to extreme impacts expected across Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. These are areas that were already devastated by recent storms, and they are nowhere near fully recovered. The stratospheric sudden warming event that meteorologists confirmed for mid-February is creating atmospheric conditions that typically lead to prolonged cold weather patterns. The temperature disruption 30 kilometers above the Arctic has reached 50 degrees above normal in some areas, which is the kind of energy that can keep weather patterns locked in place for weeks or even months. Right now, there is something called the Madden-Julian Oscillation that is temporarily shielding parts of the central and eastern United States from the full impact of this atmospheric disruption. But weather models show this interference weakening over the next 10 days, which could allow the stratospheric collapse to reconnect with surface weather patterns and trigger another major cold outbreak. The contrast between different regions continues to be absolutely staggering. While the eastern states have been locked in this crisis, California is preparing for what meteorologists are calling an atmospheric river that could deliver close to an entire month's worth of rain and snow in just a few days. The western states are experiencing their lowest snow cover levels in satellite records, with some areas running 33 inches below normal for the season. This extreme regional difference is actually part of the same atmospheric pattern that is creating the eastern crisis. The jet stream has been locked in this massive U-shaped configuration that keeps intensifying both extremes. Neither pattern can break free from the other, so the heat dome over the west and the cold trough over the east just keep getting stronger and more persistent. Emergency shelters across affected states are still operating at or near capacity, and many are preparing for the possibility of another surge in demand. The psychological toll on communities that have already endured weeks of crisis conditions does not show up in weather statistics, but it is very real for millions of people who are dealing with ongoing anxiety about the next emergency. Medical facilities are still treating cases of cold-related injuries and complications from the extended exposure period. Emergency departments have seen increases in frostbite, hypothermia complications, carbon monoxide poisoning from improper heating, and cardiac events triggered by extreme cold stress. If another wave hits while hospitals are still processing these cases, the medical system could face serious capacity issues. If you are finding this information helpful for staying informed about these developing conditions, please share it with anyone who needs to understand what is really happening with our weather right now. The more people who grasp the true scope of what we are dealing with, the better prepared our communities can be for whatever atmospheric chaos comes next. The homeless population across all affected areas remains at extreme risk, even during this current warming period. Outreach workers are discovering that people who spent weeks in survival mode during the brutal cold are now dealing with severe health complications. Many individuals have developed respiratory problems, circulation issues, and mental health challenges that persist even when temperatures rise. The most heartbreaking aspect of this crisis is how it has revealed gaps in our emergency response systems. Cities that thought they had adequate shelter capacity discovered they could not handle the surge in people seeking safety. Baltimore, with only 562 shelter beds, received over 20,000 calls to its shelter hotline during the worst of the crisis. Many were turned away with nowhere else to go. Looking ahead to the rest of February and potentially into early March, atmospheric scientists are watching for signs that the Canadian Arctic air mass could break free from its current position. The strength of this potential system is what has emergency managers across multiple states maintaining a high alert, even during the current warm-up. International weather agencies are issuing warnings about the global implications of what is happening over North America. The same atmospheric disruption is affecting weather patterns across the Northern Hemisphere. Europe is dealing with its own version of unstable conditions, and Asia is seeing temperature swings that mirror what is occurring here. The agricultural implications are becoming more serious with each day this pattern continues. Spring crop planning is being complicated by uncertainty about when normal weather patterns might return. Food supply chains that were disrupted during the transportation chaos are still working to stabilize, and producers are warning about potential shortages if another major disruption occurs. Energy markets remain volatile because of ongoing uncertainty about heating demand and the repair status of damaged production facilities. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve has been used to help maintain fuel supplies in affected areas. If a predicted late February cold outbreak materializes, energy systems that are already stressed could face even more severe challenges. The timeline for full recovery varies dramatically depending on location and infrastructure quality. Some communities restored basic services within days, while others are still dealing with compromised power grids and communication systems. The areas that are taking longest to recover are also the most vulnerable to additional extreme weather. Climate research institutions are intensely studying this event because it represents atmospheric behavior they have not documented in the modern era. The combination of multiple stratospheric warming events, persistent blocking patterns, and extreme regional temperature contrasts is providing new data about how weather systems can cascade into extended crisis periods. Emergency management officials across affected states are emphasizing that people should not let the current warming create false confidence. The supplies and preparations that helped communities survive the recent crisis should remain readily available. Communication plans should stay active, and support networks should be ready to help vulnerable neighbors when conditions change again. The upcoming weather pattern could determine whether this winter goes down as a crisis that regions survived and learned from, or a disaster that fundamentally changed how we prepare for extreme weather events. The atmosphere above us remains fractured, unpredictable, and capable of producing conditions that push human endurance and infrastructure to their absolute limits. What happens over the next 2 weeks will show us whether we are finally moving toward normal winter weather, or if we are just experiencing a brief calm before an even more dangerous phase of this unprecedented atmospheric disruption that has already expanded across more states than any single weather event in recent memory.